Okay, today we got some big news. Number one, I got a haircut. Number two, Riot might have finally fixed its terrible schedule. Now, most of you will know, of course, that the schedule from last year just made no sense, right? The main problem, I would say, was that this is Champs 2023, and the season ended on August 26th. But then the start of 2024 didn't begin until Feb 17th. And you might know that that's a pretty massive gap, and that had a couple problems. Both in Tier 1 and Tier 2, this was kind of the same thing, where obviously the off-season was just way too long, right? Just way too long. But also, that meant that the actual season itself was very condensed, which meant that there was burnout problems during the season as well. So basically, it was the worst of both worlds, right? For both fans and players. You know, the season itself was too condensed, the off-season was way too long. It didn't make any sense. Luckily, Riot has provided us with this video now, the 2025 format explained, but hopefully they fix some of these problems. So we're going to go through this. I'll pause it at various points and talk about, and we actually have a lot to talk about. There's a lot in this video for just being 6 minutes long, and a lot of it I think is pretty good. So let's get into it.
What's coming next in the VCT? We have got a lot in store, so let's dive right in. First up, right after Champions, the best challenger teams from around the world will compete in Ascension, fighting for a spot in the international leagues. These teams will expand each IL from 11 to 12 teams and have a chance to defend their spot at the end of the next season. In October, challengers will pick back up with more competition, bridging the gap between the 2024 and 2025 seasons.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because that's actually a pretty significant change as well. That we know about Ascension is going to go to 12 teams. Also, there is some Ascension changes, which some people don't like. I've made a video about that previously. The Challengers thing, though, of that starting in October is pretty good, because it shortens the Challengers off-season by quite a lot, right? So that's already a positive there, because obviously if you're a Tier 2 org, do you want to have players signed for 6 months when they're doing nothing? Probably not, right? So hopefully that is a way of kind of bridging that gap, at least somewhat. And then also the good thing about Challengers starting in October is there is no Tier 1 Valorant, right? So if you're someone like me who wants to watch Pro Valorant, well, Tier 2 is your only choice, right? Which hopefully should increase the viewership numbers at the start of the season, so you can kind of get invested in some of the teams and the storylines and what's going on in the Challengers League early on. I think that's just a big win.
Now, so starting next year, partner teams will be able to run academy teams in Challengers. Academy teams won't be eligible to participate in Ascension, but we hope this change will better support talent development in the VCT.
Okay, that's obviously a big win as well, right? And yeah, you don't get to compete in Ascension. Makes sense. And I think that that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fair, because again, the goal of Tier 2 is talent development. I mean, Leo just said those words right there, right? So academy teams just make sense. And will all of the Tier 1 teams, you know, partner teams, have an academy team? No, right? But will certain teams? I mean, certain teams did before, right? Teams like DRX had academy teams before, so you would assume that, you know, they're gonna do that again, and that's gonna be good, because if you're a pro player in Tier 2, if your choice is, well, do I want to get paid? I mean, yeah, I can't compete in Ascension, but I'm gonna get paid, and if I'm good, then, you know, someone will probably pick me up. So obviously just a win overall.
4 Ascension teams and over 40 pros coming up from Challengers this year added fresh blood and new stories to our sport, including 2 teams qualifying to Masters Shanghai. We are very encouraged by these results and hope to continue seeing that trend in 2025.
The off-season returns with an incredible slate of tournaments, including show matches, open bracket events, influencer tournaments, and invitationals. Some fan-favorite events are going to return, including the Red Bull Homeground, Ludwig and Tarek, and Spike Nations. We're excited to see the community coming together, teams testing out new rosters, and playing in unique types of competition. Finally, in November, we'll close out the year with Game Changers Championship at the new Riot Games Arena in Berlin, once again crowning the best GC team in the world. We're expanding the tournament from 8 to 10 teams, giving more players the opportunity to be seen and showcase what they're capable of.
Okay, another win, I would say, right there at the end. You know, the Game Changers is going from 8 to 10 teams. That's good. The off-season kind of looks the same as it was before, but again, hope it's not having to fill, you know, hopefully as long as we'll get into now.
Now let's look ahead to 2025. We're very excited to bring our global events to 3 new locations next year. The first Masters of the year, happening in February, is coming to Southeast Asia in Bangkok. From there, we'll cross the Pacific and bring the VCT to the East Coast of North America this time with Masters Toronto in June. And last but not least, we're thrilled to share that we'll close out the season in the City of Lights with Champions Paris.
Ooh, okay, so those are the 3 locations, you know, one in Asia, one in Europe, one in North America. So, you know, everyone at least has one good time zone, or at least they should, hopefully. So, yeah, that makes sense, right?
All right, with our events locked in, let's talk about the shape of the season. We have learned a lot this year, and in 2025, we'll implement a number of changes that will make our sport more competitive and more exciting to watch. The first big change is that we're expanding the calendar. The season will now run from January to October.
Okay, let's pause right there. Because obviously this is very big. So the season will run from Jan to October, right? So before we were looking at late Feb to, you know, August. So you can, again, see the difference, right? The difference of starting in Jan, running to October, from where we were before, starting in, like, you know, mid to late Feb and running to the end of August. You can see that, oh, that's quite a bit of space that you've added, you know, on either side here. So obviously very, very good.
Better aligning the game and the sport.
Okay, I also want to talk about that little sentence there, because that's something that you might not have thought about. That if you've been paying attention this year in VCT, you will know that anytime that Riot is releasing new content like Clove or Abyss or the new agent that's about to come out, they're releasing it after, you know, the Masters or Champs, right? There's a show match, and in the show match it gets revealed as to what it is, and then it releases a couple days later, right? That's what they were doing. That is not what they were doing before, right? What they were doing before was releasing it with battle passes, right? When a new episode started, that's when the new content would come out. And what's happened, because they've started doing it in the show match for the esports, which makes sense on one hand, it means that the battle pass and episode, like, act schedule isn't aligned with new content, right? Battle passes just start and end, like, randomly, it seems now, right? And new content drops on random patches. Hopefully, by fixing the calendar, they can now reintegrate that schedule, right? Because again, they couldn't do this before because the off-season's 6 months long, so they can't have a 6-month-long battle pass.
Shortening the off-season and giving teams more time to rest and prepare between competitions. To keep the stakes high throughout the year, every competition we will award teams with championship points that will strengthen their bid for champions. We're reworking the system to better distribute points throughout the season and better reward teams for competing at Masters.
Okay, so they're not giving us the full details on that, but let's explain why that was a problem as well. And to explain the problems, let's come to a Team Heretics, who basically showed that the system was somewhat broken. Now, the overall system of champs points, I must say, I think is a good one. And the example you would use for that is Sentinels this year, right? Sen are at least finishing in the top 4. They would not have qualified if champs points did not if they didn't exist. But Heretics proved that this was kind of broken, right? Because if we take a look at their season and what happened, they came here in kickoff and they finished second, right? They got 0 points for this by finishing second in kickoff. They then went to Master Madrid, didn't do too well. We come to EMEA, and again in EMEA in the grand final, they lost to Fnatic, right? And again, they got 0 points for losing this grand final. Now, they did get points for winning these other games here, but this was 3 points on the line, and they got 0 of them, right? And then we come to Master Shanghai as well, and they come to this grand final, and again, there's 3 champs points on the line, but because they came second, they got 0. Right, so again, they just kind of proved that the system was broken, and hopefully what we'll see, or if what I guess we'll see, is that when you win the tournament like a Masters, you get 3 points, but if you come second, you get 2, right? And if you come third, you get 1.
Information on that later this year. To get the season started, the kickoff tournament returns in January, now with the new format. 12 teams will compete in a straight double elimination bracket, with the top 2 teams qualifying for Masters Bangkok.
Okay, let's quickly go back to this, though, because this is also important. So 12 teams, you might know. 12 teams is just better for a tournament than 11 teams. The kickoff format was very weird, very bizarre, didn't make much sense, and wasn't very good last year. This one that you're about to see is better. So we got 22 games, you can see. Now, the old kickoff, this year's kickoff, had 21 games. So we're looking at a similar amount of games. I'm hoping that because this is just a straight double elim bracket, that they do 2 games a day. And by making it 2 games a day, the previous kickoff was about 7 days long, 8 days long. This one should be about 12 if I've done it correctly, so hopefully we'll get a longer event as well. You can also see, though, look at this. 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed. It's done like this, okay? So these, I'm gonna guess, will be your champs teams. They're gonna get a bye, okay? And I'm guessing where you finish in your region, you know, I mean, so you could already do this for Pacific, right? So this is DRX up here because they finished highest in Pacific, okay? And you can do it like that. And that's very interesting, right? So if you got to champs, you're going to get a bye in the next year's kickoff.
From there, Stage 1 will qualify the top 3 teams from each league to Masters Toronto. Action will continue in Stage 2, which will no longer carry over records from Stage 1.
Okay, that's a big point as well. We can't miss that point. That is a huge, monumental point there. That in Stage 2, your Stage 1 performance does not carry over. So let me explain why that is a massive, massive deal. Because what was happening this season was that your Stage 1 and Stage 2 results were combined in Stage 2. It's a problem because if you're a team that does really bad, like Furia or MIBR here in Stage 1, when it came to Stage 2, they were essentially already eliminated. You could argue that, hey, we're qualifying for champs here and we want the best teams to make it. Okay, so combining the records meant that it was more likely that the best teams were actually going to make it and not just someone who got hot later in the season. But I think overall this is a good change because there's already a backup plan for teams that were good at the start of the season but then aren't, you know, later on in the year. Champs points, right? That's what champs points are for.
Playoffs will expand from 6 to 8 teams, which will keep more teams in contention for a longer period of time and give teams more chances to qualify for global events.
So what I'm hoping for the 8-team playoffs is that we keep the seeding. The seeding, I think, is still very important. And the way you could do this, so for instance, this year had seeding, right? So for instance here, Foot and Team Heretics, they finished as the top 2 teams here in EMEA. So when it came to the playoffs, they got a bye straight through to this upper semifinals part just here, right? Which obviously makes it more likely that they qualify and gives you an incentive to finish in the top 2 spots, right? That I think is important. So let's take the EMEA season and say that Team Liquid and BBL, you would also be involved in the playoffs here, right? And we have an 8-team playoffs instead of a 16 playoffs. What I'm hoping is that the top 2 still get their bye, right? And that these 2, the teams that finish 6th, 7th, and 8th, that these start in a lower bracket, right? And that these 4 just play each other. So the way it would work is these 3 to 6 still play each other like they did this season, right? The winners of that play against, you know, the top 2. The losers of that come to the lower bracket and play against the 7th, 8th team that are already starting in the lower bracket. The reason that this, I really hope that they do this, is because if they just have like 1 plays 8 or something like that, so many of these late regular season games will mean absolutely nothing.
Next year, we'll celebrate an important milestone, the 5th anniversary of Valorant. And I want to reinforce our commitment to continuing to build this amazing sport for years to come. Looking further into the future, 2026, we'll bring champions to China, and in 2027, back to the Americas.
Interesting.
Live events are magical, and we look forward to continuing bringing them to players all over the world. We're also committed to continuing to integrate the VCT into the game itself. Last year, we introduced Premier, which continues to evolve, and this year has promoted more than 40 teams into Challengers, creating a starting point to Valorant's path to pro that's available to players everywhere. We've also launched the Esports Hub, which we'll continue to build and add on to with experiences like Pick'ems, which launched for Champions this year. And then lastly, we're very thankful for the support you've shown for Team Capsules. The collection was a big bet for us this year, a way for you to support your favorite teams and rep them in-game. Next year, you can expect a refresh of the classic skins, as well as a brand new capsule, kind of like what we did with the 2023 lock-in bundle.
Okay, there's a bit of an L there. This is kind of the, I would say, the one major L of the video, which is more classic skins. Why couldn't you just pick a ghost? You know, just do a ghost. Like, I don't understand the continuing classic skins. And then we're also getting kind of a lock-in-esque bundle. We'll have to see what that is. Don't know. So that's the schedule. Much better. It's much better. I cannot understate how much better it is, right? So many different things are better. Having 12 teams instead of 11 obviously helps for some of this stuff as well. But yeah, this overall is just a massive win. Everything other than the skins, I think is just a big win, basically. So hopefully next season is just much better.